Hello and welcome, I'm King's Degree with MMOplay.com, and this is the top 10 tips for playing Ekko, the boy who shattered time. I've read and watched dozens of guides along with playing him for countless hours to bring you the best way to play this champion in a nifty top 10 list. As we descend, the more important the information. Number 10, the level up path and runes and masteries. Your time winder, the Q, sits at the very core of every Ekko build and playstyle. Take and max the skill first in every situation, followed by phase drive, the E skill, wrapping up with parallel convergence, the W skill. Lowering the cooldown on phase drive is essential for better mobility, which is why it gets maxed over parallel convergence. Put a point into your ult whenever possible. Take your typical ability power mastery page, 21, 9, and 0. For runes, there really isn't a uniform opinion, but I like to go with the ability power quints, marks of magic penetration, seals of armor, and cooldown reduction glyphs. This keeps your power high and abilities spammable. But if, like a lot of people, you only have 2 rune pages and a limited amount of runes, you can get by with the standard ability power setup. Number 9, the position to play. Ekko is right at home in the mid lane with other assassins. The shortest distance to get back to lane, and the luxury of quickly roaming to other lanes to pick up kills. Granted, like similar physical damage assassins, you'll be at a slight disadvantage against mages, whom also make their home at mid. Because of this, some crazy like to take this time traveler where he's not optimal, as we should say, like top lane or even the jungle. Sure, some people can pull it off, but generally there are better options for both positions. He has little to no sustain and a rather weak clear, making jungle a pretty tough option despite the really great ganks. And believe me, I tried to make Jungle Ekko work. And top is difficult, of course, because you can be bowled out of lane pretty easily unless you forsake a lot of damage for tankiness, which also doesn't work. I tried. Number 8, general playstyle. Your goal is to be a constant nuisance while dealing heavy amounts of damage whenever you can. Due to Ekko's mobility in E and R, you are free to jump in and out of fights whenever you desire. That's on top of your passive, which gives you a huge movement speed boost. However, if you want to do more than just pick off low health targets or harass, you need to be able to take a few hits, which is why going with a off bruiser build is great. So much so that it leads to people wanting to play him jungle on top, since it synergizes with his general character build so well. Due to Ekko generally not being able to 100-0 targets like Zed or Talon, but still being just as squishy on a base level, requires a lot of fast thinking. As he says himself, it's not how much time you have, it's how you use it. Use your mobility liberally and only attack when your abilities are off cooldown. Number 7, the laning phase. Laning is an uphill battle for a low health melee assassin. Even worse when your abilities are suited for drawn out combat instead of fast assassinations. So much so that you're basically the bottom rung for everyone to pick on. That is, until you read this guide. Notably, the golden combo. Play safe and farm early and only harass to get the enemy to back off. Every once in a while, push your lane into the opposing turret and roam to a lane where the enemy is overextended. Or if there isn't one, just sit back and let your opponent think you did. That is, unless you have a freeze going on, then keep it status quo. Number 6, build paths. Items. Glorious things for which to adorn myself with. The item I would tell everyone to pick is the crystalline flask and some health potions. Boy, does it help with the bad early game and be able to trade with the enemy, be back at high health and mana while they're still short on one or the other. That will allow you to bully them out of lane, missing creep score or even pick up a kill. Exceptionally skilled players would go with Doran's Ring, but I find it's not 100% necessary. Further down the road, pick up a Rod of Ages with some Ionian Boots of Lucidity for a more bruiser build, which I most wholly recommend. Or for you bloodthirsty assassins out there, pick up a Luden's Ekko and a Sorcerer's Shoes. Follow both choices up with some damage like Rabadon's Death Cap for sure, or maybe the Zhonya's Hourglass for some physical defense, or Lichbane, Luden's Ekko. Rabadon's is a great general pick, and Zhonya's active isn't that great, but it definitely helps against, say, opposing melee assassins or a very fed AD carry. And the Lichbane, Luden's Ekko synergize well in general with this build. I think typically I would put the Lichbane over the Luden's Ekko though. A few situational items include the Morella Nomicon, Typically, if you're behind, the jungle utilizes it well. The Abyssal Scepter is great for magical defense and still upping that damage. The Void Staff is great for an opposing team with a lot of heavy magic resist. Number 5, using that Q. This is the skill that defines your general playstyle more so than even your ultimate. Using the Time Winder effectively is initially a bit intimidating, being, a skill shot and all that. Essentially, when the Time Winder goes out, it gets to a certain point fast and then slows down while continuing to move forward slightly. After a few seconds, it will come back extremely quickly. Going out and coming back will apply a stack of your passive. On top of that, it slows, so it's great for initializing combos or catching up to fleeing enemies. In addition, there's some pretty hefty damage. Going out, it's relatively small, but coming back, it hurts. Try to maneuver your character around enemies to catch them on the return trip more so than the outgoing trip. Farming is a bit tricky initially, but you'll get the hang of it. Attack a bunch of minions so that they have 2 stacks, then throw out the Q to proc that passive with the added damage, and then go through and pick off any stragglers. Try not to rely on the return trip to finish off minions because it takes too long and they may already be dead due to your minion line, although that largely only applies to the very early game. Teamfights are somewhat difficult for Ekko due to his innately low health and defense. He shores this up with mobility and an item path like a Rod of Ages. The trick is to look for ideal opportunities and relying heavily on proccing your passive. Look closely to see if an enemy has used their key abilities like a Zed Shadow, and then jump in to deal damage and then sprint right back out. Largely drawn out fights with other better bruisers like Udyr will win out and you can't out assassinate a Talon. The key aspect here is mobility, jump in, jump out, repeat. Number 3, mobility. This word will begin to look or sound strange by this point because I've mentioned it so many times, and that is simply because that is really what this character is about, more so than any other champion save maybe Kassadin, which coincidentally plays in a similar manner. Your ultimate, Q, and passive, already as it is, allows you to run circles around most people, but having E really seals the deal. Press just once for a short flash on a few second cooldown, and then press it again for not only another short flash, but for immense damage which can proc your passive. It is a simply spectacular ability. There are tons of uses for this skill, like jumping over walls, dodging abilities, massive damage, running away, or most commonly to gap close on enemies. Like most champs, you too have an effectually named golden combo. It can go one of 2 ways: E, auto attack, Q, auto attack, or Q, E, auto attack, auto attack. Both proc your passive while doing a mental amount of damage, even early on with pre-items. The great thing about this is that it's not just damage. You also get a massive speed buff while slowing your foe, meaning you can immediately run to safely after dealing a third of their health bar's worth of damage. It's a safe, high damage, and efficient. Get used to using this combo, both in trades and while laning in teamfights later on. Before we get to number 1, I'd like to mention the W. I didn't really touch on it too much, and the reason being is that there's not really a trick to it, or a tip, really. For the most part, what I would do is I would try and predict where they're going to walk. And it's not something you can be like, oh, in this situation you're always going to do this, but that's not really the case because people are unpredictable. Typically you would want to, say if you're trading, you would want to throw it behind them, and then you would E in really quickly. But otherwise, don't come to rely on the stun or health, but think of it more as a great bonus. However, in teamfights, you can almost always get away with proccing it. You just gotta be careful. You don't want to jump in and die just so you can get that stun or health shield back. So anyway, number 1, ultimate efficiency. Seriously, one of the best abilities in this game. Being able to go back to a previous position is valuable. Being able to heal half the damage you took during that 4 seconds is amazing. Being able to also deal a ton of damage is absolutely incredible. Use this skill in a variety of different ways, like getting out of sticky situations, surprising an enemy for a kill, or using it in a place for damage and a heal. One really fun trick is to jump into the dragon or baron pit with your E, and then steal it, and then ult back out of it. I tried to do it, but I just wasn't able to. It's definitely a little bit difficult, but it's totally fun. While your ult is up, you are nigh unkillable, except when you can't press it fast enough, like I have done on too many occasions. Keep a watchful eye on where your hologram is to maximize effectiveness. For example, if you're running away from a chasing enemy, you can snap back, healing yourself and dealing damage, then unload another golden combo to hopefully finish that kill off. Another usage is to run the wrong way, getting enemies to funnel themselves in the wrong direction, then snapping back the right way, leaving them in the dust. A good habit is to keep yourself moving back and forth in a variety of directions, and then thinking 4 seconds in the past, or future, or is it past? In other words, move yourself in the present in ways that can benefit you in the future. Who would you like to see me cover next? Leave a comment below and make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.